Did you know? Despite the small size of this park, Pleasure Beach actually holds the second longest combined track length of any park in Europe, only to be beaten by Europa Park. The combined track length here roughly works out to 28,571 feet, or for you metric lot, 8,708 metres. To really put this in perspective, if you placed all the combined track along the seafront, it would stretch over 3 times the distance of what it would take to reach the Blackpool Tower. A huge thanks to Dwayne from Rollercoaster Database for supplying this information, and also Becca from Pleasure Beach Experience for the approximate lengths of steeplechase. You're watching Backseat Blackout, and this is Did You Know Blackpool Pleasure Beach featuring Pleasure Beach Experience.
Did you know? The Big One opened in 1994 as the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster. The Big One was inspired by the original Arrow hypercoaster Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. The Big One's track and supports were manufactured in Bolton by Watson Steel. Watson Steel worked to specifications from Aerodynamics to manufacture the track. Aerodynamics were too tied up on projects elsewhere to work on the Big One's track themselves. The track and supports were too big to leave on site at Blackpool Pleasure Beach once manufactured, so they were stored at Blackpool Airport before being erected into place at the Pleasure Beach. The Big One was modified in the winter of 1996 with the first drop and turnaround altered. The first drop was altered due to the roughness of it, as well as the train chassis getting more wear and tear than expected. The turnaround was also altered to help maintain the speed around it and to help reduce roughness of the overall ride experience. The Big One has different wheel compounds for different weather. Fast wheel compounds are used on the trains for windier days, and slow wheel compounds are used when a clear day is expected. Intermediate wheel compounds are also used when the wind speed is somewhere between being a low and a high speed. Fast wheel compounds are not used all the time because the ride would repeatedly e-stop if they were used on a clear day, whereas slow wheels cannot be used on a very windy day to avoid a rollback situation. The Big One cannot operate on free trains whilst open to the public, but it is sometimes tested on free trains to determine which train or trains can be used on the day of operation. The Big One is its official name, but according to the Blackpool Pleasure Beach Park map, it is still sponsored by Pepsi Max. In 1994, when it opened, it was known as the Pepsi Max Big One and stayed that way through to 2011. In 2011, it was renamed to just the Big One, but kept its sponsorship. The Pepsi cans at the beginning of the ride are regularly rebranded to keep up with any rebranding on actual Pepsi cans.
Did you know? The official name for flying machines is actually Sir Hiram Maxim's Captive Flying Machines. Dating back to 1904, this ride is the oldest operating amusement ride not only in Pleasure Beach but the UK as a whole. Creator Sir Hiram Maxim is the inventor of all sorts of everyday items we use today, from the mousetrap sprinkler systems to even the portable machine gun. Mind you, not saying this one is an everyday item. Flying machines was originally invented to simulate the feeling of human flight. This was the intentions of Maxim when designing this attraction. Back in 1904, multiple of these were built across the UK, however Pleasure Beach is home to the last remaining one. Although this attraction was successful, Maxim was not happy with the finished result. He wanted the passengers to have some degree of control over the swinging cars by installing rudders and airfoils, similar to what would be used on rides such as Skyforce today. Unfortunately, at the time this was deemed unsafe, which had taken what was to be a vital part of the attraction away. Maxim was angered by this decision, even going as far to calling his own invention a glorified merry-go-round because of this. Another interesting fact was that flying machines used to be located right on the beach. This was later moved back to where it can be found today as the park began to expand into a much larger amusement park.
Did you know? Valhalla opened on the 14th of June 2000, costing $15 million to build and was manufactured by Intamin. The actual ride system was allegedly finished inside the building before the theme for the attraction had even been finalised and decided upon. Project 2000 was a project name for Valhalla, and a project that Blackpool Pleasure Beach consulted the public about for many years before pushing ahead with any plans for the space left behind by the funhouse which burnt down in 1991. Valhalla has been voted as the world's best water ride in the Golden Ticket Awards on at least 6 different occasions. In the years it hasn't been voted as the best, it has never been too far off the top spot. It was once quoted that Valhalla costs around £250,000 a year in gas bills alone. Valhalla was Jeffrey Thompson's last big project at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The ride was designed to operate 25 boats with a throughput of 2,000 people per hour. Over the years, the capacity has dropped on Valhalla, with it usually operating on anything between 6 and 12 boats nowadays. Valhalla has 2 lift hills, 2 turntables, a backwards drop and 2 large forward-facing drops.
Did you know? Derby Racer propels you at speeds of up to 25 miles per hour. It may look like a relatively gentle ride from the sidelines, however this 1959 carousel is not for the faint-hearted. There are a total of 56 wooden horses that travel in a circular anti-clockwise rotation, as well as rise up and down to simulate the feeling of riding on a horse. Beneath the attraction is a room in which you can get a closer look at how the mechanism works. The outside horses give the most intense ride, and if you want an even more white-knuckle experience, you can also rock the horse back and forth. You literally feel like you could fly off, I'm not joking. If Valhalla's water bill wasn't enough, then check out the electricity bill on this bad boy. Derby Racer is lit up by 1,000 light bulbs.
Did you know? Big Dipper opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1923 at a cost of around £25,000. It was designed by John A. Miller and constructed by William Strickler. Big Dipper was constructed in the winter of 1922 and was the first European roller coaster to use Miller's under-friction system, where wheels beneath the tracks would keep the roller coaster carriages on the track. It was in complete contrast to previous roller coasters due to the greater speeds and steeper crests, giving passengers airtime which would have been unsafe using the side friction system used on older roller coaster designs. After additional land was purchased by Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1935, the Big Dipper was altered in order to open up the centre of the park for other attractions. The Big Dipper was altered by Charles Page. It is also believed that the Big Dipper's original layout was considered to be boring compared to the newly opened Grand National. The high-level turn and 3rd and 4th dips were replaced by a 3rd turning dip, an arch over the south entrance at the park, and an aeroplane bend at the new southern boundary. The mid-level return loop and banking turn were adapted and linked to the original undulating station return by another dip, this time going under the new access road leading from the south entrance. Altogether, the ride was extended by 200 foot. In the 90s, Big Dipper ran with 1 4-carriage train and 1 3-carriage train. This was to try and increase the throughput during the pay-per-ride peak periods. The Big Dipper had new sensors installed following an incident in 2009. With the new system in place, the Big Dipper's lift hill was slowed down. The new sensors were put in place so that the train on the lift hill could be stopped if it reaches a certain point before the other train had returned back to the station. The Big Dipper station was also given a new look before reopening in 2010, as well as the trains given new styling.
Did you know? Icon was constructed at a cost of £16.25 million, coming in at the highest ever investment made by Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Blackpool Pleasure Beach had been planning for their new coast for about 5 years, with engineers and Pleasure Beach representatives riding different roller coasters all over the world before making any decisions. During the press event, I asked what was the biggest inspiration for Icon's design. Amanda mentioned Cheetah Hunt from Busch Gardens, Tampa. You can clearly see the influence, especially with its low to the ground layout, S-bend section and multiple launches. Pleasure Beach had 3 roller coaster manufacturers looking at the project, Mack Rides, Vekoma and Intamin, all of which had very different ideas for the project, and it's also been stated that Mack's initial designs were quite different from the ride we see at the Pleasure Beach today. As part of the staff training program, Icon's ride operatives went over to Germany to train with Europa Park and Mack Ride staff on Blue Fire. Despite claims that Icon is too slow, Icon is the second fastest roller coaster at the Pleasure Beach with a top speed of 52.8 miles per hour. The Big One is the fastest roller coaster at the Pleasure Beach, with Infusion being the third fastest. These facts are from Roller Coaster Database. When riding Icon, you have to be 1.5 meters tall to ride in the back and 1.3 meters to ride elsewhere. This doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a more intense ride or the most airtime here. However, this row has been altered to fit larger guests by having slightly larger seats, and they are very comfy. You need to try them out. Although Icon doesn't really have a theme, there is a very interesting story behind the styling of this coaster. Ever wondered about the cherry blossom trees and general Japanese influence? Turns out Amanda Thompson had a vivid dream when planning Icon which involved all of these elements. It does make me wonder what type of cheese she was eating that night, because I want some.
Did you know Alice in Wonderland opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1961? The ride was manufactured by Arrow Development but constructed by staff at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Alice in Wonderland was built under licence from Disney and was a nod to the special relationship between Walt Disney himself, Arrow Dynamics and Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Walt Disney visited the Pleasure Beach many times before and during the construction of his Dream Disneyland Resort project. Scenes in the Alice in Wonderland attraction are based on Alice's adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. The attraction was constructed at a cost of around £50,000.
Did you know? Before its eventual demise, Wild Mouse was one of 4 wooden Wild Mouse coasters on the entire planet. Back in 1958, this was the first major attraction to be built at Pleasure Beach since World War II. It was entirely designed and constructed in-house, taking a total of 3 years to complete. Because of the relentless nature of Wild Mouse, the cars often took the breakneck turns at insanely high speeds. The final turns were taken so fast that they managed to pull just under 2 Gs laterally. This probably wouldn't be allowed when building a coaster today. Another design quirk that simply wouldn't be allowed nowadays was the proximity of the lift hill to nearby track. It was so close I often found myself ducking on the lift hill. Bear in mind I'm only 5'8". As a prevention measure, a sign was added basically telling you to mind your head, so yeah, I can kind of tell why we don't see coasters like this anymore. Thank you for watching Did You Know Blackpool Pleasure Beach featuring Pleasure Beach Experience. If you would like to see a second part, then please hit that like button. There is so much history and tons of facts to cover here, so if we can hit at least 400 likes, then we'll get cracking on a part 2. I also want to say a massive thanks to Scott from Pleasure Beach Experience for joining us on this episode. Make sure you subscribe to them, link in the description below. If you want to see more footage like this, then hit that subscribe button and flick the bell. Top left is our latest video, bottom left is a random video, and click on the buttons on the right to sub to us and Pleasure Beach Experience. Hope you all have a fun shiny day. Ciao!